Welcome to the Straight Red Card. This is Howard Cosell. This is the show where Brett occasionally wears women's clothing, and Derek allows a trained monkey to shave his back. Gentlemen? How'd you like that intro, Brett?
I liked it. Thanks for throwing out the shout out to my occasional female clothing.
Yeah, well,
weekend.
I don't know who wrote that trained monkey part. I don't mind the shaved back thing though. All right, well, actually, before we get going today, one of the stories I have to tell you that happened this weekend, and you've heard a little about it, but it's one of those stories you just can't make up because it would be impossible for it to happen otherwise. But yesterday after the tragic falling of Muamba goes down during the Bolton game. And, he's in critical condition. There were some very racist tweets going out from South Wales. And from a gentleman whose name I won't mention here because we don't need a lawsuit because he's been arrested, but he is not been, officially been found guilty yet. But anyhow, this guy in South Wales begins tweeting these horrible things. I should have brought them. I mean, they're really bad. They're about as bad as it gets. I mean, as far as racism in a tweet can go. In fact, I have it here. This guy says, F Muamba, he's dead. Ha ha ha. And then he uses other racial slurs I can't repeat. So the funny thing that happens is that our friends Jared and Kyle start talking about this on our little, we have a little private soccer friends page. And the dog reads it. He gets all involved, right? And so he ends up going to this racist pig's Twitter, and he copies it and he pastes it on Sky Sports, their Facebook page. He also pastes it on their BBC page and says, it's time to expose these kind of pigs for who they are. And not long after that, Stan Collymore, and if you know Stan, he's a former player, big advocate, against this fighting racism in soccer. But anyhow, he finds out about it, and one can only gather that he saw it maybe on the BBC page or, and that's wishful thinking on the dog's part. Maybe that's what happened. But anyway, you slice it. 20 minutes later, Stan Collymore tweets this guy and says, I have read all your posts and I'm forwarding them to the police. Well, lo and behold, we all get up this morning, Gerald, Kyle, myself, the dog, and what is on the front, or one of the front articles on, the Washington Post. And the headline reads, Police arrest man for allegedly racist tweet about critically ill Bolton player Fabrice Muamba. It's also in all the British magazines as well, websites. I believe The Guardian and a number of others. So here it is, this very same guy, and yes, it is the same guy, and we know that for sure because they mentioned that he's from South Wales, and he lives in the Swansea area, which is where this guy was tweeting from, and he's in jail now. So I guess, you can either agree with that or not agree with it, because in this country you can say all the racist things you want and not get arrested. But in Great Britain they have a law against that. So this guy who just, and then the guy claimed, of course, that it's a huge misunderstanding.
His Twitter account got hacked.
Yeah, it got hacked. But it's funny, he only noticed it had been hacked after Stan Collymore said, hey, buddy, I've just sent your tweets to the police.
Well, what's funny is that I think it was Jared also posted a guy on Facebook who did the exact same thing.
Yep.
Pretty much posted the exact same comment.
Horrible comments.
A bunch of his friends, called him out on it. Some of them agreed with him, whatever. But and the same thing occurred. They're like, hey, get off his back. His account was hacked.
Yep.
I don't know from personal experience because I've never had my Facebook or Twitter account hacked.
Oh boy. Don't give anybody any ideas.
Yeah, exactly. The big thing is when people hack your accounts, it's not to post stuff like that on there.
No, typically that's not why they do it. Yeah, they do it to spam people.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is very, very, very coincidental, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I love it. As soon as Stan wrote him. He said, I'm not a racist, and I'm not a person who will ever discriminate against others. This is a huge misunderstanding. I am, but earlier he says, I'm awfully apologetic about anything I have said. I have said. I do not condone anything that has been said. What? You said it, but you don't condone it. Then he says my account's been hacked. Yeah, well, I don't think the police bought that either.
Well, and as it was pointed out, you can easily find out he's telling the truth. You just have to do an IP search.
That's correct. So he's pretty...
Yeah, my guess is he's busted and good.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, good news. Well, it brings us to other news. Jurgen Klinsmann last week finally stepped up to the podium and was asked about Herculez Gomez. And in typical unfortunate Jurgen way, and listen, I have nothing against Jurgen Klinsmann. We've been very supportive of him here as things have developed. But he responded finally to people saying, hey, when is this kid going to get another shot? He says, well, we have a big roster, obviously 20 to 25 right now that we feel very comfortable with. But there is a more extended roster filled with the January camp players, a lot of them, and Herculez is part of that. Okay. So he's basically saying, and then he goes on and says, there's an internal ranking, and he's just not fitting into that internal ranking. There's established ranking, he says, like with every national team program, and they're there for a reason, but it doesn't mean that you kind of downsize somebody else. It's because the spot is taken. Can I ask you, Brett, who's taking that spot? Josie Altidore? That's about the only person. And then, of course, you can list Dempsey as a striker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Dempsey and Donovan have been listed as strikers, at least in the past game.
Yeah, but they keep
against Italy.
But they keep bringing Agudelo, Bunbury, Buddle, Boyd, Wondolowski, Sapong. So you're telling me all these other guys, and outside of Josie, deserve all the call-ups they're getting. Why? Because they're younger or because they're better? That's my question.
And see, now, and that's one thing. I was like, can you really look at a guy who's scoring and assisting, not only in the Mexican League, but also in CONCACAF Champions League?
Yeah.
Can you really look at a guy like that and say, you know what? He's behind Juan Agudelo.
Yeah.
He's behind Till Bunbury.
Exactly.
Nothing against Bunbury or Agudelo.
No, they're good young guys.
They're not performing at the same level at this point.
And neither is Edson Buttle right now. I'm sorry. Yeah. And then, here's a guy who's getting a brace in Mexico, then comes out and gets a brace in the Champions League. And one of the guys on Big Soccer said, well, he's really a bench warmer. No, he's not a bench warmer because bench warmers don't play. I mean, he's what you would call a consistent late game, they put him in super sub. Yeah. And guess what? Not only does he come in almost every game he scores in so many of those games with minimal time. That should give him more credit. In fact, if the U.S. want to use him in that very same way as a super sub, that makes a lot of sense to me. So,
well, you know what? Screw the internal ranking.
Yeah,
I really don't care where the players rank. I want players that are performing.
Yeah.
I want players who are performing well. And I know we had this 2-year drought where Josie was not playing or not playing super well with his club. But you know what? The striker position is thin.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And there weren't that many options that were actually a better option. In this situation, we have a guy who's scoring. We have a guy who's assisting. As you're saying, as you also pointed out, he's coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the games he is actually starting, and he's performing. There's no reason why he shouldn't be higher on the ranking if there is going to be a ranking.
I guess there's a ranking system, but what the hell could it be possibly based on? How much pine you ride and not score?
Potential. They look at Agudelo, they look at Bunbury, and they're looking to groom for the future. Same thing with Boyd.
Yeah.
They
all ride pine and they don't score. But all the guys you just mentioned, they ride pine. Well, Teal Bunbury doesn't. Agudelo rides a lot of pine. Boyd rides a lot of pine. And yet, listen, Wondolowski scores a lot of goals. Granted, he is older, in fact, than Gomez, if you want to use the he's too old argument, which is bull because he's only going to be 31, 32 in the next World Cup. And that's not old for a striker, especially a poaching striker like Gomez, who just knows where to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah. Again, screw age. Age doesn't really matter at this point either. it's nice to plan for the future, but as in the present, you really have to play the players who are performing.
Yeah.
Agudelo and Bunbury very well could be the future striker options. 2 years, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 5 years down the road, who knows?
Yep.
But as of right now, when it comes to qualifying, I want a player who's performing.
Let him prove it. That's all I have to say. And when
give him his chance. He did well under Bradley. I would imagine he'd do just as well under Klinsmann.
Yeah. I mean, he said some other weird things. He said, and this will end it, but the Mexican clubs are really kind of surprised that our coaches go down to Mexico. They are? How can they possibly be surprised at this point? We've been bringing players from Mexico during the Bradley era. Is that should either he's bullshitting us, or Mexican clubs are the clubs are dumb, because obviously we're going down there and have been going down there for some time. Okay.
Well, I'm sure that U.S. coaches before Bradley were going down there as well.
Absolutely,
we've always had Mexican Americans playing in the Mexican League. However, we've never really been many Mexican Americans first option as far as a national team's concerned.
That's changing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is changing. But it shouldn't be a surprise to them, and I don't think they are surprised.
Right. Well, apologies to those who have already heard us discuss this before, because but you know what? If Klinsmann wouldn't have brought it up again or been giving us those silly excuses, I don't think that we would have brought it up and talked about it again, because obviously we all know what side we're on this. Welcome to the Straight Red Card. This is Howard Cosell. This is the show where Brett occasionally wears women's clothing, and Derek allows a trained monkey to shave his back.